How do we keep people engaged in a conversation? Man, let me tell you, conversations are super simple. They're freaking amazing. In the whole social dynamics and pickup world, we look at conversations as this dissected science that we're going to get, and we're build up all these concepts like value or working off the technique and so on. However, like all things social and like all things sexual, they are absolutely incomplete if they do not include you. This is where we get a little bit different, because at TSL, we're saying, look, you've got to be yourself. What the fuck does that mean? Fuck being yourself. What if you don't like yourself? What if being yourself sucks? Look, let me tell you something. If you go in with an archetype or whatever, and you're running from yourself, it's never going to get better, and you're actually going to create worse problems. But check this out. We have a very simple, and I don't know why other people don't do this, so by all means, I hope we spread the word here, is that we take a social dynamic and have that work better than a social dynamic that is more standard out there, which requires value or not being you or posturing or being the archetype of some authentic man rather than really being you, which is what authenticity means. And plug that into a social dynamic and have you get better results. So the question actually came in from a longtime TSL guy on how do we keep the conversation engaged? And I was talking to this girl, and this and that was happening, but it just didn't seem to go anywhere. I lost interest. She lost interest in a place where where a lot of us know that happens. And it's kind of easy to get to if you're not doing the right thing. So the first thing first is you have to explore this. And this may sound confusing, but it's super simple because you'll be able to think of it instantly. Okay. And that's what we're going with. I don't care if it's good or bad, or you think it's impossible to talk about. But the first thing we're going to talk about is what we want to talk about. So what would you want to share with people, whether that's quantum physics or time or babies being born or the new iPhone or whatever it is, but what you really want to talk about, what you value and you see that is important. And again, this isn't just some stupid little quirky novelty thing. This is really what you want to talk about. So it probably isn't the new iPhone. It's probably something that has a meaning to you and that you have a lot of thought about. Why? Because if we can get you talking about this like you talk to a friend about it, you'd be able to talk endlessly about it. Okay, and you might be thinking, but don't worry about that just yet. You might be thinking, well, don't worry about this, what I'm about to say, is that, well, chicks don't like that. Dude, just go with me here. That's easy. That's an easy problem to solve. Okay, the next thing that we need to think about is what do we find attractive about women? And of course, this can turn into so many different things. It could be looks, it could be personality, it could be how active she is, her views on whatever. But let's actually get into this and really, really explore this, because where TSL comes from, it comes from a massive amount of experience of guys who've had sex with women. Of course, myself included in that. Now, when you're having sex with women, when you have a lot of different relationships, whether they're flings, whether they're one-night stands, whether they're long-term relationships, whether they're broken relationships, you realize that it is not just about the things that you see right there on her. This is an interesting thing when it comes to pickup. There I was talking about tens and high-value women, and we have to get that, and that's what's going to make us a man. No, what's going to make you a man, what's going to actually make you happy and fulfilled with your sexual life and your expression of you is your entire self working with the entire her and seeing what happens. So when we look at a woman, we know that we can like her body, we can like her face, we can like how she's dressed, we can like her tits, her ass, whatever it is, but there's going to be something deeper than that. So it's fine if we start with like, you're hot. That's not a problem. We can rapport cycle, which is the technique we're kind of diving into here, about how hot she is. That's an easy thing to do. So check this out. We need to know what we want to talk about, and we also know what we want to get out of them. Okay, so what's attractive about them, and really explore why. Because again, if we can engage in that and we are truly attracted to it, it's not just some blind thing like the virgin who's sitting at home playing Halo for 12 hours every day for the past 2 years is going like, no, I just want a girl that is like, Rihanna, and she does this. It's like, no. You can like a girl that looks like Rihanna. You can like a girl that has traits of, but you're so far off the map and in fantasy that it's pointless. So you need to be able to look at those two things, what you like or what you want to express and what you like about women. And of course, there's going to be many things, but that's your starting point. Okay. Here's the general map. We want to project who we are And let's pick something difficult. You could say like quantum physics. But actually, we'll give the example that was given on the call that we're on right now. And then you need to get back something that you feel attractive, right? So you need to express and you need her to express, and you need those things to meet and mix. All right, so how we're going to do that, that's kind of an easy enough concept. We're going to take quantum physics and we're going to take her awesome body. Let's say that's the thing that we're attracted to about her. We're going to get her to express that. We're going to get us to express this. In fact, we'll go with us first and then get this. And then we're going to have them mix. And that's what's going to build connection. So it's not attraction. It's not comfort. It's not seduction. It's connection that's happening, right? And it's at first an emotional, social connection. And then later it can turn into a sexual connection, which the main catalyst there is intent, boom, connection again, but through intent. So anyway, that being said, how do we do this? Well, rapport cycling is a structured conversation that we teach over and over again at TSL. You can watch just probably hundreds of videos on it. But the best thing that you could probably do is we'll take TSL online, because then we'd coach you through it, which is what we're doing here now. But you could also sign up on our membership site, which is a little bit of dipping your feet in the water on it. So check this out. Rapport cycling is really simple. It's a structure and it can get very elaborate, but it's very simple. Number one, you ask a question. Okay. After that question, you then give a ground, which is very simple to explain. It's either an expression from you that shares a certain perspective. It's an expression about somebody else that shares a certain perspective, or it's an expression that is just a perspective or an opinion. So it could be like, question, I like art. Man, art for me is this and that, and blah, blah, blah. It's this amazing thing. That would be an expression from me. Or it could be like, man, my friend Nate is an artist and he's like this amazing guy and that taught me this. That's an expression. Or it could just be, art is awesome. It's something that everybody can do and express themselves with. That's an expression about just the concept alone. So pretty simple, right? Okay, now let's take this when we get into quantum physics, which I don't really know that much about, but I know enough to kind of like go, hey, Michio Kaku, or whatever, string theory. But if we were talking to a girl, and this may not be your best opener, but we'll also double it up with what was really asked in the call. We could say something like, I have a question for you, and this seems kind of weird. This is that first question, right? And then we just simply say we want to steer it. And really the point of that first question is to guide it in the direction that we want, which ultimately is her awesome body. But basically we're just going to say like, hey, I want to ask you a question. It's kind of weird and you might not, I don't know, it might not make sense to you, or it might totally make sense to you, but have you ever heard of quantum physics? Okay. And so she's going to say yes, no, or maybe so. And it does matter what she says, but it doesn't matter what she says in order for us to continue on with our expression, our ground. So all we need to do with this ground is have her understand it. Now, if I want to get really artful with this, which I can be, because I'm the one who kind of coined rapport cycling, so I know it really well. And I've done it for 10 years with, thousands and thousands of people in multiple languages. So it's kind of easy for me to do. And I also used to write these stacks that I'm just good at it, okay? But it's easy for you to learn. But the best thing that you can do in this is not only have her understand it, but know how important it is to get her engagement from it, okay? So I'm just going to go there with this ground. And so basically I'm going to, she answers whatever, have you heard of quantum physics? And she says yes, no, or maybe so. And I then go on with my ground. And I say, see, the reason why I ask is because I love quantum physics. It allows me to see the truth in so many different things, and it gets so complex. And you look at all these, different things that so many people don't understand, but it's just beauty to me. Okay, so that's pretty simple. We're not fully done with the ground yet, but that was like 2 or 3 sentences. I'm not sure, I didn't count, but very short, 10 seconds or so where she can get that. And I'm just generally talking about it. Believe me, if you get in a conversation about quantum physics, you can continue on with that, okay? Like you don't want the details to confuse somebody at first. You just want that general idea to come forth. So basically, I just described this really passionate thing, okay, in just a few sentences that I think almost everybody can get, that it's complex, it's weird, but it allows me to see beauty and truth. Okay, it allows me to see that. I love it. And of course, if the conversation were to go more on quantum physics, I could talk more specifically about it. All right. So I just got this general idea of beauty and truth. Now I'm going to continue my ground, but remember, I want it to be able to come back to her, or I want it to go to her and then have it come back to me. Right. Boom, boom. All right. So, man, this beautiful thing that I'm really into, not too many people can understand it, but you know what it's kind of like? It's like the beauty of people or women and all these types of things. In fact, let me ask you this. Now, in the structure of rapport cycling, so we're pausing here, we go question, ground, which I just did, and now a second question, which is what we call a challenge. Now, usually with rapport cycles, we'll probably need question, ground, challenge, ground, challenge, ground, challenge before we really get anywhere, but you're going to get the idea from this. So I now just in my ground put out the idea of beauty, something that I'm really, really into, and yet some people don't understand it, and it's kind of like a woman in her beauty. Okay, so pretty fancy. So a woman in her beauty, and now what I'm going to do with that challenge is I'm going to ask her about it, okay? So that challenge, I'm not going to ask about quantum physics, how I started, and you can do that. You can literally ask the same question at the end with a different kind of setup. But now I'm going to ask a question to her that's going to challenge her, that's going to mean more, that's going to feel more, and I won't have to, let's say, like explain much because I already explained it with the ground. Okay, so I'm going to say, like, look, let me ask you this, like, I talked to you because you're really an attractive person, but probably the most beautiful thing about you is something that people do not notice as much. Like, I really want to know what that is. Okay. Now, at that point, you just met this girl. This is something that you essentially opened with, or this was off the opener. And I would have, if I'm not having a conversation like this, it's because I don't give a shit about the conversation. I would have this conversation within probably a minute to 90 seconds of meeting somebody. If not, and I did care about talking to the person, it would be because of some weird outside thing. But I'd get here very quick. If I'm not here in 5 minutes, then then get me out of that conversation because I don't want to be there. So basically she'll understand that, but that'll confuse her. Why? Because she doesn't know you. All right. She doesn't know you, and she's kind of possibly afraid to answer. She kind of understands it, but it's like, why am I answering this question? I don't even get this personal with my friends. So because we actually know that fear, and we may not know it specifically, but we generally know she's not answering this because she doesn't know us. And it's a little bit uncomfortable. Guess what? We can then solve that in a ground. Okay. So super simple. And the coolest part is sure, quantum physics may confuse you. Sure, the concept of beauty, or you're not attracted to a woman's body, then why are you here? Maybe that's not the thing you want to talk about. But no matter what those things that you plug in there, what you're attracted to, and what you want to talk about it is, the second cycle will almost always have to do with resistance, or her not being aware of what it is you're talking about, or something of that nature. She's going to feel uncomfortable. So the second ground is basically going to have to do with having her understand. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to start it off, which is you could cookie cutter this. This you could see as like a black and white technique where you can add yourself into, of just saying, you know what? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put too much pressure on you. Very simple. That's how we start out the second ground. You know what? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to confuse you. Like I said, I get so into all this quantum physics stuff and don't really know stuff. Don't really know how to talk to the average beautiful woman all the time. Okay. All I have to do is get her to understand this. A concept in TSL is that people don't judge you if they understand you. Okay, so all I need to do then is get her to understand me. Prove me wrong with that. They can make a choice about you, but they won't be detached and dislike you for no reason. So I'll basically say something like this. You know what, man, I didn't mean to ask too crazy of a question. I'm totally sorry. Totally cool. We could switch the subject, but basically it's like this, like, guys talk to you or whatever, and they notice this, they notice your body or your face or all this sort of stuff. But I can guarantee you, like, what it is you're looking for, what it is they're looking for, what it is everybody's looking for is this connection or love or whatever. And nobody really knows how to go for that. And again, I mean, this is where I see the truth the same in quantum physics is people miss, what is right in front of them and like how connection works everywhere and how feelings can get transferred and all this sort of stuff. But let me just make this clear to you. Now I'm going to do the next challenge. Okay. Cause I did kind of space out. Again, I'm no master of quantum physics, but I watched What the Bleep, rabbit hole, whatever it was. So there you go. Basically I kind of like talked about some specifics there enough to understand, but not too much to get confused, and boom, next challenge right there. Okay. So the next challenge will be like, look, let me really ask you, like, what seriously is the most attractive thing about you that people don't notice? And let me just be clear of what I mean for this. Again, personal question, hard to answer. The only reason why she's not answering it is because she doesn't know how to answer it because she doesn't feel comfortable. So let's make her comfortable. This is a extension to rapport cycling called the listing of threes. And I'm going to give her 3 easy things that she can think of, access, all that sort of stuff. Don't let that confuse you. If you really want to get that down, watch video 9 of Formula 69 and you'll fucking nail it. So basically, I'll say like, what's the most attractive thing about you that people don't notice? And I know it's another big question, but like, let's say like when you're with your best friend, she sees, or he or whatever it is, sees like the best side of you that you wished a boyfriend would see, or what's the thing that like, that last guy was like kissing you or whatever. And you felt this thing and you just wished that he would feel it. And then 2 days later, when he talked to you, you realized it wasn't. But the thing that just, man, the most important thing, like that only a close family member would know. So I just gave 3 examples of whatever that thing might be in her mind so she can understand it and know it, because I want to have a conversation with her. I want to get her expression. I want to get her body, her beauty to say, whoa, you're interested in Steve, right? You're interested in this guy that's interested in quantum physics, and you can now talk about your body linked with it. And so basically, I want to say that, right? And so I want to challenge her on that. And so now I know she's thinking about it. What's the most attractive thing about you that people don't notice? Like something your best friend would notice, or like your last boyfriend, like you just wished that he would like you, but he was just chasing an orgasm the whole time. Or, I don't know, your closest family member like sees this in you and you just wish that you could share it with somebody special. Okay. I don't care if she answers that or not. Why do I not care that she answers that or not? Not because I don't care about her expression. I want her expression, but I realize that when she's going to show her real self or her truth to me is going to be in isolation. So I don't care, when I'm alone with her, when I'm hanging out with her. So I don't care about what she's going to say to me right now when she's under pressure. And most likely she won't be able to, but she understands it. Okay. So I can then say something along the lines like, you know what? You seem really cool. You're somebody that, you get this, you know what I'm talking about, and you understand beauty on a different level. And, man, you have 15 minutes, 20, 30 minutes next or this coming week where we could have coffee or something like that. And what I say in that is I say, go for the easiest yes date possible, the most simple, low pressure date to get somebody interactive with isolation, because that is what you need, one-on-one connection. Now, it's up to you to read in most situations, especially in higher stimuli. This can absolutely work, man. Because why can it work? Because I've done it for 10 fucking years, man. You isolate first, and you should not be doing really any pickup at all if you haven't isolated. So I don't get why it couldn't work. There's a whole bunch of argument stuff for this, but you should always isolate. It's pointless. You can't get sexual. You can't get rapport without isolation. Get isolation. So if you isolate, this can totally work. But if I were in a high stimuli environment, now we're saying something like, look, what's the most attractive thing about you that nobody ever notices? Like something that you can think of right now, like all these guys are looking at you dancing or whatever, but like the beauty is in your expression. Like, what is that? Like, what is that for you? And she's thinking about it. And maybe now may not be the best time to ask for a date. Like I'm just sensing that it might be a little bit off. And I could say, look, you seem really cool. Like, let me come over here for a second. Like, I want to ask you something like really, like I just talk to me for like 30 seconds. I want to ask you something like really important. And I'd move and isolate then. But again, I just want the situation to move in that way. All right. So I wanted to step forward in those ways. Now, I know you've been listening to this for a long time, but here's the actual question. Okay. And I probably should have started with this, but so much of this is improv and like, a one take thing. But the question was actually this. I asked a girl about, babies and how time flies. And I said something, I'm probably messing this up, but something along the lines of like, man, isn't it amazing how like time just totally flies? Like, it just seems like the other day my nephew was a baby, or a few weeks ago, or something along those lines, right? And, she says yes or whatever. And I forget what the challenge was, but again, it was a challenge that went for something that worked and not something that was a true expression of that person. So really what he should go for in that challenge is either more of an expression of him or something that has to do with her that is hot. So he's like, dude, I was attracted to her looks. So why not ask about her looks? So you can say, man, isn't it crazy how time flies? The whole baby thing, these are like all recipes for rapport. And I kind of sense that this had more to do with a technique that would work. I could be wrong. Than a technique that was really based off of him, even though it was based off of him. But what is the most important thing to you? That's really what it should be. That's what you want to talk about. And if you are attracted to her looks, you could say like, look, man, time flies. Like, do you actually think beauty is in a moment, or is it an image that we can hold on to? Like, look, this is actually, guys, listen to this. This is the best thing, especially if you're like, you have something that you really like talking about that women don't understand, and it's technical. Here's what they will understand it. So I could say like, beauty is like this, or you talk about the baby and you say, oh man, just a few weeks have passed and, time has flown by. Like, then I go to my challenge and I say, look, beauty is like one of those things that, do you think it's a moment in time that happens, like this experience, or is it like this thing that we could reproduce? Now, she may or may not understand that, but she's going to partially be engaged. And that's all I care about. I just want her to be intrigued enough to follow along to my next ground. So now I'm going to have it make sense. Why don't people answer questions? Because they don't understand it. They don't know us. But if they could, and they could easily answer, and they have an answer that they can easily express in their mind and give back to us that's good and pure, they're going to do it. Okay, so I want to make that happen. I'm setting it up, right? And so that's super simple. I just say, and here's the thing that came out of my stack so many times, like when guys were engineers and they're like, that's not an attractive occupation because Mr. E said so. I'd be, oh no, man, it's awesome. People just need to understand it. So I'll go like, here's what I mean. I don't mean to confuse you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to like press too hard there. Again, remember on our second ground, we're going to back off a little bit most of the time. We can almost instantly put that in there. And then I'm going to say, it's like putting on makeup. It's like, when we're putting on makeup, we get lost in this detail, and it's such an expression for yourself. I mean, I grew up with a sister. If you didn't grow up with a sister, I had a friend that, would tell me about makeup or whatever. It's pretty easy to know a girl that's interested in makeup. So just reference that. And you say something along the lines of like, no, man, she would tell me like all the different things in the experience. And as a guy, you don't understand it. But there's this awesome thing about your personal expression of that. And the crazy thing is most people don't notice that and see beauty to you when you're in front of the mirror, or when you're out dancing or whatever. I mean, it could mean a lot of things, and I don't know. And actually that's why I'm asking, but is it that experience of expression, or is it just like this icon or an image thing? And she can say whatever. Most likely, she'll probably give you an answer on both. Like it could be both things, and start to give you all sorts of examples. And then you could jump like, man, see, it's so weird because that's what you could ground off of whatever her answer is. Like, oh, it's an image that I like, and I like these things. And then it could be something else, like it's an experience when I am dancing, and I don't know what you mean, kind of, sort of, blah, blah, blah. And then you go, man, totally. That is exactly like what I was thinking about, when I see my nephew or niece or whatever it is, grow up. It's like there's this moment that's this awesome thing. And then there's themselves in that moment of who they are. Like, and it's just so cool to watch. Yet we see that around us all the time. And man, we never fuck, it never happens. Now, of course, me being more like kind of the philosophical nature and getting people's heads or whatever, I like doing that. So I'd probably go in that direction, but you could literally take this in any direction that you'd want. Okay, so if she engages saying that it is the image, it is the experience, or whatever it is she says, you could say, man, that is so interesting, because I was talking to this guy who was talking about wilderness survival skills, and he was almost saying the same thing. He said there were like 5 of the most important things that you had to have to survive. And the first thing wasn't water, it was actually a shelter. And then the next was water, the next was food and tools and so on. And I actually forget it, but I just thought it was so interesting that what makes it possible for us to have peace while surviving in the wild is shelter in an environment. And I really think that in order to have, again, now the general concept of beauty, or the general concept of experience or icon or a moment, you could say, man, in order to have those things, to be able to freely think of them, we need to have like, something standing around us so it can happen, like an ecosystem. Like, man, I probably should have asked you this. What would you say is your ecosystem of relationships? Because so many people have bad relationships, especially attractive women. Another question, and it's kind of like a challenge, so I can ground. Again, and so we just keep cycling like that. We could say, man, again, didn't mean to ask you an intense question, but really, like, are your relationships good ones? I mean, mine aren't always. It's hard to do. Like, man, it's a crazy thing. Like, what's most important about a relationship? Is it the physical first, because that's how they mostly start, or is it the emotional? What's the difference there? It's actually funny, because when you look at gay couples interact, like 2 lesbian couples, there's such an emotional drive at first. Well, most of the time, not all the time, because I've seen some lesbians get pretty physical. But then when you look at men, it's like immediately physical, and then the emotional comes. It's just crazy. Like, what is it for you? And you could keep moving and moving and moving, diving deeper. But you need to know what you want to talk about, and you need to know what they want to talk about. And it's super easy to do. There's a lot of different factors there that seem complex, but dude, we have tons of tutorials on this. We've taught it over and over again, repetitiously, to so many different people through all walks of life, people who have handicaps, people who have like way too many advantages, and everybody gets to the same place. It's fucking awesome. So if you want to learn about it, visit thesexuallife.com. I would go to the members site and just dip your feet in the water in there, and TSL Online will have you freaking master this. Man, and if you become a member, you can get Formula 69. So it's win-win. All right. Talk to you later.